Today, we're going to be talking about all of the holiday traditions that we celebrate, a little bit of the background and the history of those, and what type of traditions are we passing on to our young people today on Freedom Friday. It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free. Well, welcome, friends and family. It's another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with Sharif El Mekki and me. Good to see you, Sharif. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. Good to see you. How's everything? Can you hear me? You're muted.
I couldn't find you.
You find
Maybe
me now?
it's just me. See, COINTELPRO working already. First thing in the morning.
I hear you fine. Okay.
Yeah. I could hear you before. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Doing well. Yeah, it's like a whirlwind, man. Like so they're like, wait a minute, last week, what was it doing last week? But overall things are going well, man. We're in the middle of strategic planning, trying to launch our teacher academy, our courses, getting ready for the break, all the things.
This time of year, this in our household, this is like the reflective time of year. So I take off a lot of
jealous.
December. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Got to do it every year. Take off a big part of
email
this
bounced
month,
back the other day. I was like, I saved it because I was like, one day I'm gonna have an email, outgoing return email like this. So I saved it.
So you're so busy with Christmas and everything in December, but then after that week between December and New Year's has always been my reflection week, where I kind of just get through all the stuff that I didn't have time to get to, strategic work, my life work, my spiritual work, all that stuff. And then, so that you arrive on New Year's Day with a fairly clarified vision of what the next year should be like. And also just cleaning your mind out. Well, I used to do that between Christmas and New Year's Day every year. And then it just grew. There was one year where I had taken no vacation time, and they told me, well, you're either going to use it or lose it. I was like, all right. And that turned out to be most of December. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this. Actually, I'm going to try this again. So anyways, today we're talking about holiday traditions. We're talking about, where our traditions come from a little bit. What do we know basically about them? It's not like we're experts on it, but what do we ourselves celebrate? What did we grow up celebrating? And what are we passing on to our children, our young people, in terms of the holiday traditions that they will celebrate? But let's start there, though, just with you, because in prep for this, I was looking at Christmas. I was looking at Hanukkah, and then there was a gap in my knowledge. I was like, okay, wait a second. So is there a Muslim Christmas, or is there whatever? And I, fell down a little rabbit hole. And I was like, where's the Muslim Christmas? I know that Muslims revere both Jesus Christ, and Mary is in the Quran. Actually, found this out, did not know this, but Mary is actually in the Quran more than Jesus is. I think like double the number of entries about Mary than there are about. I was like,
there's a whole chapter named after Mary.
Whole chapter, right? Like, okay, so Christians, you're gonna learn today. Did you know that? Did you know in the Quran that, number one, I don't think that a lot of Christians know that Jesus Christ is a revered character within Islam, but I personally didn't know that that Mother Mary is up there too, like you just said, whole book. So anyways, help me fill my ignorance. What do Muslims celebrate this time of year every year as the rest of the world is celebrating Christmas?
We enjoy watching you all, No, but you know what? So the Muslim holiday, there are two like main Muslim holidays. They're called Eid. One is at the end of Ramadan, month of Ramadan. and the other one is after the Hajj season when we, where we go to Saudi Arabia and to Mecca and perform the Islamic rituals there, which is from the belief is that Prophet Abraham built that, him and his son Ishmael. They built this place to worship God. And so at the end of that, there's a Eid, and then the end of the month of Ramadan. Now, what you got to remember is we go by a lunar calendar, so ours move around. So I think a couple years ago, our Eid, one of our Eids was right during this time. So it was literally, the three Abrahamic faiths were all, celebrating. Plus we had Kwanzaa on top of that. So then it was like, that was a really, really festive time. So our Eids can be throughout the year. Every year it kind of probably moves back 11 days, something like that, based off a lunar calendar. So when it's stable, it's usually a solar calendar, right? It's pretty much you can, wrap around that. Lunar calendar moves and it moves
Mm-hmm.
backwards. So in a couple of years, the month of Ramadan will be, winter time-ish. Because I think Ramadan was in the spring last year, so it'll be a little earlier in the spring, and then, I think it takes 10 years overall to kind of come back to that same season.
Because it changes every year, because Islam is on the moon calendar and Europeans are on the sun calendar, the Gregorian sun calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting to me too.
Mm-hmm.
You got two major traditions in the world on a moon and on the sun.
Yeah,
there's so much to learn here. So y'all don't have like a Muslim tree or no?
maybe a date tree, olive tree, so, something we eating from. You know what I mean? But no, like traditions like like this. But it's been interesting as a Muslim with Christian family members. Always been able to just see and been in very close proximity to it all. But like our immediate family, we didn't celebrate Christmas. I've never like celebrated it in that way, but always been always wishing my Christian brethren joyous time. And sometimes I even house hop, depending on who got the least amount of lard in the food. You know what I mean? I might just go around and visit, like, hey, came to taste the wares, New Year's with the black eyed peas and before that. So
but you got to watch out for the pork.
yeah, well, you know what? The family members I go to eat, they know.
They
What I
know.
mean? They know.
Well, you mentioned Kwanzaa in there, and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that everybody knows what Kwanzaa is. There's a lot of Black folk that don't know exactly the ins and outs of what Kwanzaa is. I think we talked about it a little bit last year on last year's show. But why don't we talk quickly about Kwanzaa so that we can make sure that we hit all the traditions. So Kwanzaa is the African American holiday, annual celebration of the African American culture from January 26th to January 1st. It was created by activists. Now I'm going to mess up his name. I do it every year. Maulana Karenga.
Very good. That was perfect.
Yeah, I don't think that's exactly the way he says it though. Like, I've seen video file or whatnot. And but anyways, it's based on the African Harvest Festival traditions. And it happens every year. Families, as the numbers, the estimates of how many people participate in Kwanzaa every year range from like by a million to 12 million, which is this really strong, this long kind of misunderstanding about Kwanzaa and who celebrates it. My family did not celebrate Kwanzaa, and we still do not celebrate Kwanzaa, even though I take the tenets of Kwanzaa, which there are several tenets of Kwanzaa that we could go through. There's 7. I take those seriously, and I've used them in my writing because I think that they are concepts that can help us all. We could go through those real quick. Umoja, which means, let's see if you know what it means.
Unity.
Maintaining unity in the family, the community, and the race. And it's an uplift principle. Self-determination.
Kujitakulia.
Yes, self-determination to define and name ourselves, and
Speak
speak for
for
ourselves.
ourselves.
Yeah, create ourselves and speak for ourselves. Collective work and responsibility. Which
Hmm.
one is that?
Ujima.
Gotcha. See, we listen.
You gotta remember, I grew up with. I mean, we've celebrated it for 50 something years now. I forget the exact number. I mean, yeah, 2026
Wow.
will be what, the 60th um anniversary of it. So yeah, we still go to our school family. I talk about Nathamo Sasa. You met Mama Fasaha on one of the shows, like, so her and
Mm.
Baba and Genzi, they have been hosting Kwanzaa, Umoja Night forever. And those values, those, the Nguza Saba, those tenets, that was our value system in our school.
Well,
So we
let's
didn't
get
have to
through them.
make it.
I
Yeah,
want
go
to tell
ahead.
people the rest of them. So number
Hmm.
3 is collective work and responsibility, to build and maintain our community together, make our brothers and sisters' problems our
Our
problems,
problems,
and to solve them
solve
together.
them together. Yes,
So
sir.
that is huge. Remind me to come back to a Jewish concept that is very similar to this one.
Mm.
So number 4 is Ujamaa, which is
Ujima.
cooperative economics.
Economics. Yep.
Yeah, to build and maintain our own stores, our own shops, our own businesses, to profit from for each other, to share collective profit. Nia, purpose, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. Number
So all those
6,
girls named Nia, y'all know now what her name means. You know what I mean?
Nias of the world. Now you know where you come from. What's up with your name. Number 6 is creativity. My favorite one.
Kuumba.
Kumba, my favorite one,
That's because you're a
creativity.
creative person.
I worship creativity in a way because I feel like it's a different level of cognition. I feel like it's a spiritual level of cognition that's given to us individually. We can all think about numbers or reading or other skills, but creativity is like a fingerprint. It's like your
Mhm.
own unique imprint of your cognition. So only you have your level of creativity. That's my belief,
Oh,
anyways.
I like that. I
Um,
like
and then the last one is Amani, faith, to believe with all of our hearts and our people, our parents, our teachers,
the
our
teachers.
leaders, and the righteous and
The
victory of our
righteousness and
struggle.
victory of our struggle.
So
Yes,
those are the
sir.
7 tenets that make up the principles of Kwanzaa, that we are to celebrate every year. So tell me a little bit more, as somebody who did celebrate Kwanzaa every year. What did that look like for you as a young person growing up? What did it do for your development, and how does it carry over into your fatherhood, into your own family?
Yeah, I think, man, great and fond memories. And again, these were tenets that were woven throughout our lives, throughout our school year, throughout our year. So it wasn't just like showing up at Kwanzaa time and now we're like, oh, we have Kwanzaa. Like this was, it was almost this idea of like there's a entire arc of learning, of sharing, of growing together. So and again, these combination of being in school and being able to visit, our homes and so many people in the village celebrated it like it was and there were some who only celebrated that. There were some who celebrated Christmas and Kwanzaa, right? So there was just the diversity and how it you know people lived their lives and what they celebrated and how they celebrated it. And so there was always programs, there was always performances. Like we had all of those memorized, like the word, and the definitions. Like those were, again, those are our value system. We memorized those as elementary school kids, so we could tell you like, oh, moja, unity, to strive for, maintain unity, so we knew all that. I don't have them quite down, down pack as I did, but it definitely just, I think it's just part of your orientation when you're growing up, and I'm so grateful that those tenets have just become, part of my orientation, part of my worldview, part of my language. As you said, like you've used them to write about, and there are ways to write and think about these, like all the time, like how we interact with people, and they speak to, I think they speak to our people in a really direct way, man.
Mm. And then, you carry these principles on. from your childhood to your adulthood, so they're obviously enduring. It feels like there's in Kwanzaa, there's more of a connection to the moral story or the moral kind of character that you're supposed to develop and build. You know, a lot of the principles within Kwanzaa are around what you're supposed to do as a good citizen of
And
blackness,
community.
yeah, and
Mhm,
community, right? A lot of
mhm.
Christmas, on the other hand, there's a lot of lessons that are supposed to be learned underneath there, like do for each other and feed the poor and all that type of stuff that don't seem to make it into the mainstream of the celebration of the
Well,
actual
that's why I'm
religion.
always nervous when I see a Hallmark card with Kwanzaa, or I see, when the politicians be like, "Well, happy Kwanzaa, y'all." Yeah, I was like, "Uh-oh, like here we go." You know what I mean? Because things can become commercialized pretty quickly. I remember growing up, like you couldn't give a store like so Kwanzaa, we would exchange gifts,
Hmm,
and
hmm.
but it couldn't be a store bought. Like it was usually handmade or something that was create back to Kaumba creativity. Like it was kind of like frowned upon that you just go to the store, buy something, and then hand it like, hey, you know abaragani, and then you say the day. It was usually something that was from you, something you created, something you drew, some art form or something like that. So which was also interesting.
um, I think that there's a lot of people don't know this. I think there's a lot of back and forth about Kwanzaa in the African American community, and that's because African Americans, we have joked they range from Negropean to Afrocentric. There's this range
Diversity
in
in the
diversity,
diaspora. Diversity in the diaspora.
big diversity. So you have black folks who make it a cause to not celebrate Kwanzaa, and they're more on the
That's my
Negropean end.
funniest. It's like,
So
"That's a
you know
made up holiday." I'm like, and somebody was like, "They're all made up, bro." Like, you know what I mean?
Like when people
They're
say,
all
"Oh,
somebody
that's a made
created
up
all of them.
name," like it's a made up name. Where do you think names come from? You got to take it really slow with them. You got to speak really slow. Kwanzaa
You
just a
gotta
made
use
up holiday,
crayons. You gotta use those big fat
Okay,
crayons,
you
you know
know.
what I mean? Like, draw it out.
Um, where did the other holidays come from? Well, someone made them up. Okay, you know. Um, so, anyways, like I said, there's a long standing, I think, kind of do you or don't you celebrate Kwanzaa within the African American community with folks more on the Afrocentric end or the restoration end, the reparative end of Africans in America, not just African Americans, seeing Kwanzaa as a stabilizing force, a
Mhm.
moral holiday that creates a morality amongst the people that, if followed, we would be successful overall. And again, to the other side, there's the integrationist African Americans who believe that going 100% Christmas is joining the rest of America and is joining not self-segregating in any way, which is self-segregating is like the worst sin amongst Negropeans because they can't envision a world in which white isn't centered. For them, that's kind of like speaking a different language in
It's
some
hard
ways.
for them.
So
It's really
it's
hard for them.
very hard because I call it Negropean, but it's like Euro should be first. The PN should be first for a lot of
Mhm.
those folks because it's so well centered. Let's talk about Christmas. My fondest memories of Christmas are
Eureka.
at my grandmother's house in the
Mhm.
Seventh Ward of New Orleans, um, um, on Industry Street, not far from the world famous St. Aug. And
World famous Saint Aug.
yeah, St. Aug,
What's
people
Saint
know.
Aug?
See, stop it. You
I
have a
mean,
seventh ward in Philly. So
I
yeah,
love the fact that it's a seventh ward in
yeah,
Philly, or you at least used to be, but now
yeah.
New Orleans has held on to that. But what's Saint Aug? Like Saint?
St. Aug is a
That's a
all
church.
boys. It's all boys school. As a matter of fact, this
Oh, Hobo
year
School,
St. Aug actually is like Urban Prep. It's sending
and that's short for
100%.
Saint Augustine or something, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
It's been a long standing all boys black Catholic school. So it's
okay.
a famous black Catholic school. Many of the people in New Orleans, if you become mayor or city council member or something, many of them probably
It
came
came
out
from
of,
there.
yeah,
Got it.
St. Aug has got a long tradition. Um, but anyways, yeah, in that that area, my grandmother's house was the point of meeting for extended family. So cousins that you don't see all the time. In New
Mhm.
Orleans, when I was growing up, we had a very strong cousin system, meaning like you had
Mhm.
cousins everywhere. So
Everywhere.
to have a holiday when all the cousins, arrive or whatnot,
Mhm.
at my dad's generation, at their level, they would have their things that they did, and then
Mhm.
the cousins would have our things that we did. But it was the music. Still to this day, there are songs that come on, and it transports me instantly back to the most special Christmases that I ever had, the most memorable and life forming Christmases. My grandmother would get up. First of all, she'd be cooking like 2 or 3 days before, but then she'd get up at like 4 o'clock on Christmas morning and get all the food going. And so the
Mhm.
smell of the house just was
Mhm.
memorable. The music, the songs, still to this day, I have a Christmas playlist that
Yeah, I was about to
is
say,
from back
what's
as
one or two of them? What's one or two? Is it like the Temptation? That was one
mm,
of my favorites. I wasn't even Christian, but when that guy would come on like Silent
I
Night,
always
I was
thought there
like,
was
I used
something
to
wrong
love
with
that.
him. I thought the record was dragging. I was like,
I
"It's
thought that was pretty dope,
Silent
man.
Night." It's like Christmas. What is wrong with this dude? I tell you the one song that does it. Charles Brown's "Merry Christmas, Baby" is a song. It's covered by so many other people, but
Mm,
that version of it, going way back to then, my grandparents remembered that song. It was an old song by the time I was a kid, for them, so they would play it, and I was like, listen to old folks music, but still to this day, when I hear that song, it comes on every year, and it
mhm,
transports me back. So let's talk quick about Christmas in general. There's probably an African American version of Christmas that's a little bit different than the rest
mhm,
of America. But Christmas, if you don't know, people who are listening, who you all do know this, but we're going to go over it anyways. Christmas is an annual festival celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, typically observed on January 25th. It's a significant religious and cultural event worldwide. The holiday follows the Advent season and lasts for 12 days, culminating on the 12th night. The traditional nativity story from the New Testament recounts that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. The date of December 25th was established by the church in the early 4th century, corresponding to the Roman winter solstice, and 9 months after the Annunciation on May 25th. Some Eastern Christian churches celebrate it on January 7th. They are wrong, but they do that. Um, uh, but the very first Christmas was started by Constantine in Rome in 338 or 36, 336, which makes it a very old celebration that has this long history that we don't often talk about, of like where did it come from, and why is it on the 25th. I found something that I didn't know in prep for this show. One theory for the December 25th date is based on the Roman Christian historian Sextus Julius Africanus. What? Who is
mhm.
Sextus Julius Africanus? That's what I said when I first popped this up. Quick thought
Sounds
on that,
sus.
huh?
Sounds sus. Sounds sus.
Well, he was a Roman Christian historian. He calculated the Jesus's conception was on March 25th, resulting in a December 25th birth, which is why it's said that that Rome went with that day. It's also said that Rome picked that day because it was a strategic date to compete with pagan holidays and to make Christmas the more official one. But anyway, Sextus Julius Africanus, who was this historian who is widely, I wouldn't say known, but respected. The thing that he is respected for is having written a lot of the history that gives us a lot of what we know today about Christianity and what we know about like Rome and all that time.
Mhm,
And he was Roman and Ethiopian.
mhm.
Um, which, because I mean, I just got to say stuff like this because some people feel like black people were invented 100
Never
years
heard of
ago.
Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, in
yeah,
1619, like
yeah, and they weren't.
1619.
They had never heard of Christianity until white folks brutalized them and enslaved them. Didn't it? Like, oh, well, mind you, like
There's black
Christianity
people
was on
now.
that continent like forever since the dawn of Christianity. So,
We have a comment here from Karen M. Celebrating Christmas, understanding the nuances and difficulties with reading Howard Thurman's The Mood of Christmas each morning as Advent reading. It's sobering, grounding, sorrowful, and hopeful. Karen M., I am hoping that I could have as meaningful and spiritual of a Christmas season as that. What I fear is, though, as a parent and as you get busy and as life moves on, you start doing the performance of Christmas. You start doing the shopping of Christmas, the putting the Christmas ornaments and things out around your house. But the feeling, the mood and the feeling isn't tied up in the meaning of Christmas. Does it make people more generous? Does it make people more willing to adopt and practice what Jesus told us to adopt and practice to make our lives good? Is that what Christmas is? And it doesn't feel 100% that way. Stat that I came up with that I did not know in prep for the show. Americans spend $940 billion on Christmas. 940.
Just America. Just America.
US. This is US Christmas gift spending. Christmas gift spending. This is just gifts too. This isn't all of the spending, because people buy their. So almost $940 billion, and it goes up every year. 2019, it was 716,000. In 2020, it was 783 billion. I said thousand, I meant billion. 2020, it was 783 billion. 2021, it was 889 billion. And then 2023, which I think is one of the last years that there's good calculations for, it was 940 billion dollars that is spent. Mind you, it's that even as Oxfam America, for those of you that know Oxfam, calculates that it would take about $38 billion to eradicate world hunger. It would take just $23 billion to meet the needs of people facing starvation and acute malnutrition. So if we're talking about a world that is completely capable of feeding itself, and we're talking about a religion that reveres a man said to have turned water into wine and fed a whole group of village of people with a couple of loaves of fish and a little bit of bread, created prosperity out of all of that and fed everyone. If you think about just what we spend on gifts, vanity products for each other, you could cure world cancer many times over. And that would be the Christian thing to do, wouldn't it? But we can eradicate world hunger, or we can give each other a bunch of Amazon products that we do or do not need. Now, I don't mean to be a buzzkill, right? Because
$100 billion, that's a lot.
I feel like I'm doing about half of it myself. With all these kids,
think like, I just need to create just some doohickeys for people to buy and give out at Christmas. But you know what, it's interesting. I mean, and you talked about like just the spirituality piece, and while we didn't celebrate again, it was like, I'm glad you brought up grandmoms, right? Because that's where we would tend to go, aunts and grandmoms cribs. But one of the things that made me think of, like, I was trying to think of, when you talked about the show the other day, is like, what's my earliest like recollection of just thinking, like, connecting the dots. For me, that was the time that enslaved Black people would choose to run. So you're talking about like this spiritual, and you're talking about like that week of like thinking, reflection, freeing your mind and spirit and heart of things that may be weighing it down. Like that was the chosen time often to run, because it would be, folks were on holiday, folks would be on, celebrating and things like that. And so that was like, wow, that's one of the first memories of a holiday I didn't celebrate, but the connection besides family, I was like, what did I think about, when I thought about it? And I thought about like, hey, that was a time when people would talk about they left. They're like, we out. And folks in the big house gonna be getting drunk for a while before they come looking for us. So it gives us a little head start.
So that was the opportunity, opportune time to leave.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can't get into any show without talking about racism. So let's talk about racism for a
You
second
always
here.
want to talk about
Yeah,
race.
you just want to talk about the racism. Well, let's talk about race a little bit here.
That's made
Uh,
up. You know what? That's what's made up.
so Jingle Bells. This is so interesting to me because it goes to the fact of how many things are encoded and embedded into our way of life that we don't pay attention to that do have racist origins. So when we talk
Mhm.
about how racism is embedded and became systemic in many ways, even the songs that we sing, the things that we celebrate, many of them you have to interrogate them for where things came from to understand how racism is so insidious and becomes so like trying to take racism out of the United States is like trying to take the pee out of the water before you drink it, right? Like it's very hard to remove one from the other, and some of y'all not gonna like that, but I don't care. Um, anyways, Jingle Bells has a racist history, according to a Boston University paper. This was a news story that kind of blew up because there was a university professor who did this very long paper. If you want to go read it, here it is, The Story I Must Tell. I believe this is the one. There's been more than one about Jingle Bells. And man, when I tell you that this is deep and it goes on and on and on, and it has a background of the part of the song that's about dashing through the snow, Merry All the Way. Each of these parts of the song has a history in minstrel songs, other songs
Mhm.
that were collectively put together into Jingle Bells. There's even some speculation, and this is, not one of the parts of the confirmed parts of the story, that say that the Jingle Bells part of the song had some connection to the bells that used to be put around the necks of slaves to hear them and be able to hear them. But if you want to read a very deep story, that is not conclusive, but does hint at Jingle Bells being part of the minstrel tradition. And this is something that we sing every year, and we don't think twice about like where these things come from. And that's like so many things in our culture and in our history. There's part of the Star Spangled Banner, for instance, the national song that has a dubious racial history. If I'm
That
being
got
kind.
people. That got people fired up too, boy. They don't like hearing that. They're like, "Why you always?" you know.
But this is what's so interesting to me. So this research comes out about Jingle Bells, and the response isn't, "Wow, that's terrible. We shouldn't do that anymore." The response was Fox News and other outlets use it as a news peg to be able to say, "See, they want to attack Christmas once
Yeah.
again. They want
Yep.
to attack
That's exactly.
Christmas."
Mhm.
So it's the war on Christmas. That is, first of all, it
That's those
latched.
woke people. They always reading and doing studies and history and da da da, and trying to connect the dots. Shut up.
It is true, like social justice warriors and woke, and I'm glad you brought that up because this is very important to our traditions and the way that we think. Because what whiteness has done over time is to make the good things bad and the bad things good. It's an opposite type of philosophy. So being a social justice warrior, being woke, all of those are seen as
It's
bad.
less bad.
That's being characterized as bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being wanting to keep and maintain the status quo of inequality and injustice is seen as good.
That's seen as
Um,
American. That's the American way. Be
that's seen
more
as American
American.
ways.
Yeah.
So if you say Jingle Bells has a kind of an ugly history as a song, and we probably shouldn't sing it, the response isn't. You know what? We should uncover all of those things and turn them over so that we can have a better country and a better world where everybody is appreciated. No, the response is no. Let's keep it exactly the way that it is. We don't want
Mhm.
to upset and overturn those things if it means overturning our traditions. And some people will say that's part of my fond memories of everything. And you
Mhm.
have to ask them, so your fond memories are based upon the suffering of other people as part of your heritage. Like this
Oh
is what
yeah.
you're saying your heritage is, right? I just don't know why we can't uncover these things and say, listen, let's create the world we want. Let's create the holidays that we want. Let's create joint holidays together. Um, what would you say to the people who are like, there they go again? They're just always doing this. You just want to ruin Christmas now.
I'd be like, Yep. Sure did. Sure did. Here I come. You know, but I think I think this is a part of when people are. I think that emotional attachment that you just brought up is so important, and it's important to also recognize like that's a pattern for human behavior to kind of hold on to that blankie. What they call it is a term like you have that thing that you need. Linus had a blanket. Some people have a pacifier, something something like that. But people don't want to be people don't want that emotional connection interrupted, for
Mhm.
whatever things. But the danger of that is, if you don't critically analyze, things, if you don't recognize history, if you don't recognize like what exists now and how it came about, then you are, prone to replicate the same, kind of things. Like you can look at those old films where you got white folks in the South lamenting of how happy their black people were, being
Mhm.
subservient, being crushed under brutality. But they're in their minds, because as a child they were cared for, taken care, you know what I mean? Like, and they just remember being served, and supported, and being called Mr. and Mrs. when they were 7 years old, by some grown black man or woman, right? Like they have fond memories of this. And then later, when people are saying like, hey, we should vote, they're like, see, our darkies were happy. Y'all coming down, y'all woke folks are coming down in our peaceful, quiet town in Mississippi, and you're bothering us. Like everything was fine. Like it's to me, it harkens to that kind of conversation. You look at it now, and you see these people talking about like, yeah, we don't know why they're interrupting our status quo. Everything is fine, and they only see it from their angle. Like they're the least bit interested and are people really fine? Are people okay? Are people satisfied? They don't care about that. It's really about how they feel and felt. And no one should molest that in any type of form or fashion.
Yeah. Well, let's add another, we add some fuel to the fire. I mean, people have fond memories of certain
Yeah,
parts of their
it's how I grew
Christianity
up and
or
I'm all
whatever. So
right.
so despite outcry, Christmas blackface parade celebrated in Spain, right?
Mhm.
These things get to be so on the nose that you can't even like, talk
Bruh.
about them.
It's not even close, right? Like it's listen, Spain and Portugal, man, they are the leaders in this stuff. You know what I mean? And England is right there too, but they kind of got everything popping.
Okay, but look at Spain. So Christmas blackface parade. That there is such a thing as a Christmas blackface parade. Number one should shock us all. And look at some of the imagery, of this
Well, look, the
too.
Mummers Parade in
This
Philadelphia was pretty close to that for years too. So I want to point that out. Like, the Mummers Parade, those drunk racists, many of them from South Philly and Jersey, would parade up and down,
that's
subsidized
so
by
crazy.
the city. They just and recently started kind of pushing back on some of their, grotesque imagery and racist chants and costumes and stuff like that. They just started kind of past couple years pushing back. The Mummers were notorious.
Have you ever heard of Black Pete?
I've not heard of Black Pete. Where is this? Is this Spain again?
No, this is this is a Dutch thing. This
Oh
is the
yeah, yeah.
Netherlands.
Hmm.
So in the Netherlands, the fight against Black Pete, a holiday blackface tradition, and if you ask them, they see nothing racist about this.
Oh yeah, no, this is
They still practice this. Um, this is a tradition, and this gets the Fox News treatment over there. If you say we should stop doing Black Pete, the response isn't, "Yeah, that looks kind of whack. We shouldn't do that."
like you're
And it's like,
accosting our traditions and our family values. And you know what? It's true. These are their family
that's
values. This is
exactly it.
exactly how they're raising their kids.
That's exactly it, right? And I want people to look at this, Americans to look at this and understand this from this perspective. This is jarring when you look at it. You can't believe that Dutch, the Netherlands, the one of the happiest countries in the world by every index. Every year when they rate how happy countries are, this is a country that's the most happy.
So
of all this
racism makes a
stuff.
lot of people happy, though. You know what I mean? So,
I've always had good thoughts about the Dutch. I've always thought of them. I mean, I've never heard anything bad about them. So there's this, what seems to them to be an innocuous tradition. But as an American, when you look at this has to be so jarring that you can't understand in another culture how this would still be okay to them and how they would defend this. What I want to say to you is don't get judgmental when you look at this and look at these people, because there are things that you are fighting for in the United States that are every bit as jarring as Black Pete is in the Dutch. You just don't
mm,
know it because you're living like fish don't understand that they're swimming in water. You don't understand that the air that you're breathing is making you exactly like these people, the Black Pete people, um, of the Dutch. Now you just said, well, Spain is like, Spain is, the leader of this thing, right? And look at Spain here, whatnot. But then I give you a European one, and we could keep going down the list. This isn't somehow like a rare story, but I do want people to think about if that could happen there, and we can look at it and we can know that it's so wrong. We have to point the finger back at us and ask ourselves, what part of our traditions are we participating
oh yeah,
in that are equally as offensive?
and just recognizing, like, what's the cultural and intellectual genealogy of Americans, right? So it's not surprising, and I would say it's also, even as Black people and people of color, we also have to, really be conscious when people call us out. Like we get, when we know better, we do better, as Mama Angela, I think, used to say, right? Like, when we get more learning, instead of having a Fox News reaction, we should say, oh, like I remember when I heard, we used to be taught not to say things like, oh, so and so they're off the reservation, right? Because that was connotations of oppressed Native American people leaving the confines of, this, this camp, this jail, and so, like, and sometimes people, I remember when it calls out, people are like, no, I never thought about that. Oh, all right. You know what? And then they work to like remove it. And then you have other people like, it's no big deal. It's not a thing, right? Like, it's just interesting to see human reaction to more knowledge or more information or more, you know what I mean? Just, yeah, it's always been fascinating to me, that some will say like, oh, you know what? Yeah, let me start using other language besides that, and others be like, "Oh well, I'm gonna use it anyway."
Well, it's kind of like my birthright to
Yeah.
use it. And when people feel like they have a birthright to something given by God, it actually tends to cause problems because you don't have any birthright to any God of any of the three major religions, and maybe even the fourth and fifth, that calls for you to ignore the pain of other people, the suffering of other people. That's just not a tenet of any religion. You have no birthright by God that calls you to bring suffering upon other people, right?
But human beings are really adept at manipulating those said religions to say, "Oh no, this does say that. This is exactly what this means."
And every one of the religions tells you to watch out for those people.
Yep.
Every one of the three major religions as an antivirus, embedded and encoded in the text, the most holy text of the world, tell you to look out for the people that will be false prophets, that will use the word to do things other than love and other than peace and other than
Mhm.
justice, to look out for those people. And we have those people in spades. Now, at Christmas time should be a time where we reacquaint ourselves with the major tenets of whatever faith it is that we say we believe, because all of the major faiths in the world have tenets in them that are meant and aimed at us being just people, being achieving justice, and with the ultimate goal of peace, of world peace. So if you are using your major religion in any way to disrupt peace and create discord and sow division and suffering and ignoring the needless suffering of people, if that is part of your faith, you are not abiding by the major text, the major holy text of whatever
Mhm.
your religion is. And if you have a major time like Christmas where it is meant for you to renew your spirit, it's meant to for you to slow down and reinvest in the spiritual part of your life, then that means that you should be asking yourselves, where are the real major tenets of Christmas and of Christ? And most of those, all of them, are aimed at creating a world that is based on love and peace. There's no other kind of, I mean, if you look when Jesus said that there are two things that you hang all of the law. We could be Pharisees. We could talk about all the laws. Oh, you're breaking a law. You're a sinner. You're a trans person. You're a sinner. You're this. You're a sinner. You're that. You're a sinner. Um, you can do that, but what Jesus said was hang this on all of the law. Love the Lord, love God with all of your heart, and love each other as you love yourself. Basically, two rules. Like,
Mhm.
couldn't be more simple. Two rules. And yet there are people in the world who find a way to turn that and turn the religion into a way to weaponize, create weapons against people they disagree with or they don't like, and call out for, they need special, that group needs special attention to be hurt. We need to hurt them. We need to eradicate them. Transgender people, we don't need to love them. We don't need to support them. We need to eradicate them from American life. The liberals, the libtards, the blah, blah, blah. All of that is not the voice of God. I just need people to understand that none of that, when you start talking like that, none of that is the word of God. None of that is the voice of God. I do want to add something to the discussion. We should be going back to things like, what was the Sermon on the Mount? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And righteousness means the rightly relatedness to God. That's what righteousness means. It doesn't mean like, oh, I'm so righteous. It means that you are rightly related to God, meaning that you are in the right humble position, and you are accepting and loving the God with all your heart, which means listening to God's word and putting it into practice. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. We are talking about oftentimes in our culture now, doing away with mercy. No mercy. You are wrong. You are a sinner. You are bad. We are going to show you no love, no support. We're going to outlaw you. We're going to pass laws that basically outlaw you rather than support you. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Well, that's a tough one because everybody thinks that they're pure in heart, right? And wow. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they will be called the real children of God. And I put real in there myself because everybody thinks they're children of God. But if you are not fighting for peace, for people to be less hungry, for people to be attended to for their needs and their medical needs, their living needs, then you are not actually rightly related to God. This is just one person talking. I'm not saying that you're saying this, Sharif. This is just me saying. And then the last one, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, not because of being righteous, but because of their rightly relatedness to God. We need to keep saying what righteousness means. Being persecuted for being the ones who are attending to the poor in spirit and comforting those who mourn and hungering for righteousness and for justice and for mercy. Those are the people who the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Wouldn't Christmas be a time where we would go back through this again, just in the same way that you and I did with the Kwanzaa principles, where Black folks should be going through the Kwanzaa principles? Wouldn't it be good if Christians actually reacquainted themselves with the actual texts of their faith?
I mean, that's the goal, and I would say the same thing for Muslims. You're supposed to do during the month of Ramadan. They're supposed to really be reflecting and holding themselves to account. Ourselves, not other people, ourselves to account. Are we actually, living this? And there's this saying, a man named Imam Jafar used to say, teach people your religion without using your mouth, without using your tongue,
Wow.
right? Like,
Wow.
and how you navigate, traverse, interact with people is the real, is the real
That's deep.
instance and example of it. Yeah.
Who says that?
Jafar, Imam Jafar Sadiq. Yeah,
Wow. I love
yeah.
that.
So it's something I remind myself of, and and many people do, but like I think it's a critical part. So we don't become haughty, and we don't become you know uh, arrogant, and we think it's right, but as you said, as you rightly described, like, but far away from righteousness,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
I think we mischaracterize what righteousness is.
oh yeah, yeah.
I think we see it as being righteous, and that meaning that we are the right ones. So we get to judge others, or we get to, there's an element of being superior to
Mhm.
what we think about. Um, what we think about the concept of righteousness, but in truth and reality, within at least in the Christian text, it's a humble
Mhm.
stance.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
yeah,
humility in
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, yeah. And I was talking to this brother yesterday from Algeria, and we were reflecting on that. Islam. Our prophet Muhammad. He was told the people, I came for two reasons. I want to teach about taqwa, which is piety, like the oneness of God.
Hmm.
That there's a
Hmm.
creator. At the time, there were a lot of idol worshipers, and this Kaaba, the building, the structure that Prophet Abraham and Ishmael created to worship God, they had started filling it up with, over, hundreds of years of, like, wood carvings and stones, and, like, all these things. And, he says, so I came to clear that up. And then the other one is akhlaq. It's like your manners.
Mm, mm, mm,
And just to say that, that means that's, godliness and your mannerisms, like how you interact with God's creation, right? Recognizing God, and then how you recognize and behave towards God's creation are combined, and he said, this is why I brought Islam, or this is why I was sent. So it's we were talking about, Muslims, like how often that's forgotten, and people will talk about God, 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 and they forgot of even how you talk about God. Your manners should be right there thinking about it. Are you browbeating, or are you actually behaving in a way that people know, like, yo, that's a godly person,
mm.
because of how they interact with his creation, whether that's the environment or human beings, or other living creatures, right? Like, there are ways to assert yourself in the world that, I think takes a level of spirituality. Malcolm talks about the best forms of leadership contain spirit element of spirituality in it.
Mm, mm. Is there a difference when you say Malcolm, meaning Malcolm X? Is there a difference in the Islam that he practiced and Black Americans practice versus the global Islam?
I think there's, in any country that has, any religion, so we'll just speak specifically Muslim, like, you'll see there's a cultural element in that, you can tell and the religion is the same. The Quran, the holy book is the same. All those kind of things are the same. But if I go to an Afghani masjid, and I go to a Black American masjid, or I go to a Nigerian masjid in Nigeria, like, you'll see elements of culture, added to that. So, but yeah, overall, it's, the core tenets are the same, but what may speak louder to people based on who they are, what their lived experiences are, could be different,
Mhm.
you know,
Based upon the culture.
based on the culture and their experience. So, like,
Yep.
for Black Muslims, you might see that this concept of justice, which is in Islam, like adil, is a very important aspect of Islam that may be in there, and that may be in a Black community or other oppressed communities. They may feel like very strongly towards that tenet
Mhm,
of
mhm,
adil and
mhm,
what justice means, and where other cultures, they have a different political and other experiences where they recognize it, but that may not be what kind of rises to the top in their conversations and speeches as often,
mm.
right? And so, it's all about, so it doesn't really eradicate your culture if that part of the culture isn't contradictory to the tenets of Islam, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. I mean, I think these are the things that, like, I have questions about these things. I think that these are things that are, there's an educative, there's an education motive to wanting to know more about these things, right?
Mm.
And I always wondered that about, like, when you think about Malcolm X and you think about his break from the Nation of Islam, my burning questions that I knew that I had points of ignorance about were, well, wait a second now, what's different about that group versus, the Nation of Islam's, Islam versus some of the others, and what was his evolution, like, where was he going, and all that. I thought it was all one religion.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many variants of, the same with Christianity, right? Like if you look at Christianity, you put like Christianity on the wall and you start like drawing, there may be, like when I grew up, I didn't know that Catholicism and Christianity were that much, different in some angles. There's a lot of things that are similar. If it's a Venn diagram,
Mm.
Catholicism and traditional Christianity, then you have Orthodox Christianity, right? And then you have other variants. You even got KKK Christianity version of Christianity, right? So it's all of these,
This is true.
you know, and
I mean, you
and
got like
Islam is the
prosperity
same thing.
gospel and
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, let's test ourselves a little bit because
All
you
right.
have a
What we got?
background as Muslim. You have the background as someone who practiced Kwanzaa. I have the background as somebody who practiced, Christmas and still does. I do want to say this too for the record.
Hmm.
I talk about a lot of these things that we're talking about today as an intellectual, as a public teaching intellectual, as a person who's a student of all the things that we're talking about. I am not talking about these things as a parent who's getting it right and who's teaching my kids the right thing. I need to always come back to that point and let people know that none of this is me talking as somebody who has gotten all this right. I am a student of everything that's coming out of my mouth right now. I am studying these
Yes.
things. I have questions about them and
Same.
curiosity.
Same.
Because if you think about my household and what my kids got going on, my kids are deeply living a spoiled existence that has no connection at all to some of the higher principles that I'm talking about right now. And they should, but like many Americans, I had a very mainstream way of thinking about Christmas when I became a parent. It was all about Santa. It was all about, the gifts and the making the day
Mm.
special and putting out cookies and,
Ain't
all of
nothing wrong with putting out
this,
cookies now. Like,
the
dude,
cookies and the milk and all that. Fun fact, I found this as we were talking, the stories that we tell young people. I was trying to write about whether or not it's good to lie to kids about things like Santa and things like that. Like, and I just like,
what was that? I'm dying to know your conclusion of this writing.
I'm still working on it because I read something in Psychology Today about it that was kind of a long article about how you should handle the Santa question, with kids and with young people. And the burning question for me is there is a point where they realize that that was wrong and that they totally believed it and bought into it. And then they need to ask themselves, how many other things are you lying to me about? Like, if you had me believing that some dude on a sleigh was landing in the front yard and there was like flying reindeer and stuff, like, what else are you lying to me about?
Yeah,
Um,
that's so funny. I mean, and from my angle, we were the kids that, sometimes people would be upset with us, like parents, because we'd be like, we're
there's
fine.
no
Like,
such a thing
there
as
ain't no
Santa.
such thing. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? Like, da da da. They're like, who are you to ruin Christmas? I was just like, oh, sorry, I didn't know I was ruining. I
I
was
just
just
want to
a
be clear.
5-year-old having a conversation.
They would never play with you again, just so you know. Just so you know, because my kids, like there's a sense of mourning. Like, my daughter is the last one. She's the baby of the family, and she's the last one to convert from Santa to non-Santa. And I used to do everything like,
That's a lot of work, man, to maintain that.
oh, I had to put all their
The
gifts in a
Santa.
special bag that looked like a
Yeah.
sack from Santa, like Santa left the sack. One year I put them on the front porch so that they could go and open the door and say Santa delivered these, and these burlap bags that said
Well, if
Santa
somebody
sent
would
this
have
and all this.
stole that job, boy, that would have been a that would have been a
See,
Christmas to remember.
now that says something about y'all neighborhoods that you even got to think about that, but that's okay. All right, you do you. Anyways, it's been calculated that to successfully visit every home in the world on Christmas Eve, Santa, Rudolph, and the gang would need a sleigh that could travel approximately 2,340 miles per hour. That is like the sleigh. I'm going to say it again for the people
Sound
that
like a
didn't
lot of
catch it.
broken
So
packages.
for this is like the ultimate in Amazon for Santa to actually do what we tell kids that that Santa could do, which is deliver toys to every household where there are kids, his sleigh would need to go 2 million over 2 million miles an hour. Anyways, and that's the type of thing we're telling kids to believe in, and I'm okay with it. I would still do it today. I have no more kids that expect me to pretend that Santa drops stuff off at night, but
Well,
I
it was so
would gladly
funny
do
when
it.
I was
So,
younger, I didn't until I met kids who actually believed it. I assumed that the kids didn't believe it and they just went along with their parents to make their parents happy.
oh no.
Like they were actually, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh
you know,
no, no, no,
yeah,
no.
that's
They believe. And
yeah.
you got to make it, you know, it's a theater thing. You got to make it happen. Like you
Well,
got
that's what
to,
I'm saying. I thought it
yeah.
was as a kid, as a little child, you know, because Nathal Sasa
Mm,
had we had Christians, we had Muslims. I'm sure we had other other things, other faiths and things. And you know, it was fascinating that many of the children that I knew said, "Oh yeah, we don't believe that." Da, da, da. But then I would go outside of our little bubble, our little like kind of revolutionary circles, and I would meet people who, nah, they did believe it. I'm like, wait a minute, do you believe? Or you saying this to as kind of theater, counter theater to your
mm-mm.
family's theater? And
No, bro, listen,
that's yeah.
parents listening to this, do not let your children play with people like Sharif. Just so you know, this is how you keep things special. You keep your
Yeah.
kids away from people like
Listen,
this.
as a 5,
Um,
6-year-old, I know that I remember a couple of frustrated parents after, conversing in the library or somewhere like that with
well,
their
I'm
kids.
waiting to do this as a grandparent, hopefully one day, because I'll be back into it again. The thing I was going to say we should test ourselves on. So, we all have a background in the traditions we talked about, but we didn't talk about the Jewish tradition of Hanukkah.
Mm, mm,
Is a Jewish festival commemorating the recovery of Jerusalem and subsequent rededication of the Second Temple at the beginning of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid or Seleucid. Somebody help me out. Seleucid Empire in the second century BCE. Hanukkah is observed for 8 nights and days. And I can remember as a young person having a very facile and superficial look into what Hanukkah was for some of the kids that I was friends with. But I thought, you get a Christmas every day for 8 days straight. Y'all get gifts every day for 8 days straight. So I just didn't think it was fair. I wanted some fairness in the world. um, it starts on the 25th day of Kislev according to the Hebrew calendar, which may occur at any time from late November to late December in the Gregorian calendar. The festival is observed by lighting the candles of the Candelabrum with 9 branches, commonly called a menorah or a Hanukkah Kaya. One branch is specifically placed above or below the others, and its candle is used to light the other 8 candles. And there's some traditions that I read about that,
mm.
first of all, if you fall down the rabbit hole, you will find all kinds of just really beautiful parts, almost poetic parts of Hanukkah and the understanding. What I found really interesting too, a lot like Christmas and Christianity, is you don't have to be religious for the holiday to have meaning to you. And I think that's even more the case with Hanukkah than it is with Christmas, because Christmas, I think, for atheists or for people that are very secular, the religious parts of Christmas can be grinding on their nerves a little bit. But secular Jews actually can find meaning in the stories, the feasts, the lights, everything having to do with kind of the magic of Hanukkah. Shouldn't call it magic, but special parts of it, and it's still welcoming. It's more uniting because, in my mind, because secular people can see themselves in the tradition. How much do you know about Hanukkah, and did you learn about Hanukkah?
Not a lot. I mean, one thing that yeah, not a lot. I would say that I used to think that Judaism was on a lunar calendar as well. So I don't know where I thought that. But if they follow on the same day, that means it's solar. But I think I learned more when I actually became a teacher because there were more. I was exposed to more holidays in Judaism, so I knew of them, but I think I learned more. Whether it's Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah, when I actually became a teacher, that was, I think, my first time being around more people of the Jewish faith? I'm trying to think about like, yeah, I think for the most part, that's yeah, because it would be from elementary to Iran to like, so I knew some Jewish people, particularly those who were like in the protest and counter, American lifestyle. So we, familiar with them, but I think many of them may have been secular.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until, yeah, I think when I became a teacher, man. So like early 90s.
I think for educators, that might be
Yeah,
one of the
that's what
main
it is. I
ways
think
you
I
learn.
do secular Jewish people first, and then I learned people who practice Judaism.
This is what I'll say about this discussion with Judaism. It again, I look for lessons in all of these things. The major
Mhm.
practices of how we organize our moral lives, our faith, those tenets of all the major religions in the world call for us to be good people. And they give us very specific ways of how to become good people. They give us some practices, some norms to set, just some ways of being, mostly aimed at peace and mostly driven by love. So I just want to say you're doing it wrong if your tradition is not teaching you that, because all the major religions teach you that. With Judaism, it's really interesting to me the what it means to be an extreme minority in a place. And to live and thrive in a place. So there are 7.5 million Jews in the United States. There's about 2 million Jewish children in the United States who, when we think that there's 50 million kids in schools, they're walking into a situation every day where the gross majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people, have a very different orientation to the world than what they have. They have a different belief. They're in the extreme minority at
Mhm.
2 million children versus 50 million. And you have to ask what we do to make sure that Americans who feel that way are still included in the fabric. So Judaism has to be part of the fabric of the United States, right?
Mhm.
Because there is a Jewish people in the United States. There's a Muslim people in the United States. There are ways in which Christians need to consider about how dominant Christianity is to these other uh, faith traditions. If we're going to have a country together, if we're going to
Mhm.
survive together, we have to like be experts at how you negotiate that.
Mhm.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been under fire, just as social justice has been under fire, just as being woke, which means being awake to the injustices of the world, is under fire. All of these things, it is not God. I just want to be very clear about this. This is my sermon for the morning. It is not God telling you to turn all those things into something bad, to turn social justice into something bad, to turn a fight for righteousness and for justice into something bad, to turn the care of foreigners and immigrants into something bad, to
Mhm.
turn being a minority in a majority country or dominant majority country. It is not God telling you. I just want to be very clear from my point of view. One guy talking to you, if something is in your ear telling you to go along with those politics, the politics of exclusion and hating diversity and hating justice and hating social justice warriors and the libtards and all that, I am sorry, but that voice is not God. And it does not come from any of your faith traditions. It doesn't come from Judaism. It doesn't come from Islam. And it definitely does not come from Christianity, which is the religion I know the most about. So maybe in seasons like this, where
Mhm.
we are lighting lights and we are giving gifts and we are doing the performance of our holidays, maybe we should acquaint ourselves with our faith traditions, the parts of it that actually would be good for the world, the parts of those faith traditions that don't call us to tear each other apart and to be divisive and exclusive and hating. Uh, um, Fox News, are you listening? Anyways, so that's my wrap up on the way that I think a
If
good.
they ain't, their friends are.
I mean, well, their friends do be listening to some of the stuff that we do here and just typing it up, sending it to people. Oh my God, I can't believe they said this or that. Anyway, so Sharif, that's my final word. What's your final word on
Yeah,
today's
my
show?
final word would I will quote Malcolm, and I think excuse me, it's resonates with what you just talked about. Malcolm said we need more light about each other. Light creates understanding, understanding creates love, love creates patience, and patience create unity. So
Mhm.
maybe we need more light about each other, and so may we be light workers in these dark and fiery times. That's one of my prayers when friends and family give birth to children. I say, may he or she be a light worker for the people.
I love that. That's amazing. For the people that do want to be light workers and need some help on that, I offer you, and this is going to make my anti-social justice people just like crap a brick here. Um, anyways, go to the Center for Racial
Oh
Justice
my
and
gosh.
Education, and if you go to the Center for Racial Justice and Education, you'll find a racial justice guide to the winter holiday season. I know some of y'all just gonna freak out, oh, holiday instead of Christmas or whatever. That's part of being a more mature American is realizing that there are many different kinds of people in your country,
And
and
it's okay to be inclusive, right? It's
it's
okay.
okay to be inclusive. There's nothing in any of your faith traditions that tells you that it's not okay to be loving to all God's people. So, if you're interested, there's some teaching resources, and some study resources at the Center for Racial Justice and Education, specifically in this guide to the winter holiday season. For those of you that are interested, that is available to you. As always, we thank you for joining us for Freedom Friday. Please share this show with others. And we know that Friday mornings is a hard time for people to be with us. But the great thing is that in the week after, usually more people get to
Mhm.
stream the show, and we appreciate that on all the platforms where we are. We're on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook. So wherever you are, please share the show with others. Have a wonderful holiday season. We're going to be done for the rest of this year for Freedom Fridays, but we will be back in January better and more clarified and ready to go. So, as always, this has been an episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you're freer than you were at the beginning of this time with Sharif El-Mekki and me. Joy to the world. Have a great holiday season.
May we be freer in 2024.